Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Oh, just to remind chat and everybody else, the outside bans for this series are Umbreon and Crustle. So we'll be seeing no Bree, no Crustle, 2 defender bans out of the gate, following up with a Mimikyu from Fellows United.
Yeah,
Alright.
so 2 defenders on the outside ban, which means that more than likely these teams are going to be looking to pick up a defender for their first pick option. I was watching the Asia League over the weekend, and I saw a number of teams playing Mamoswine. Particularly, I think it was Kabi-chan's that was picking up a lot of Mamoswine. So
Mhm.
there could be definitely a Mamoswine coming out for these teams, especially with a lot of defenders being banned out. Slowbro's still very consistent. Again, that it comes that word again, very consistent first pick option.
Yeah, and I feel like Mamoswine is definitely one of those characters that has a very high, a low skill floor, but a very high skill ceiling as well. Ice Fang is a skill shot. I will not hear otherwise. Although V1 does lock in one of its few counters in that Sylveon, one of those few
Yeah.
things that can kind of keep it at range and identify it as well. I feel like Asia plays a lot of the opposite that we see most traditional NA teams play. They play a very assassin-heavy meta. We've seen things like Urshifu and Dragonite in AUL, like characters that we normally never see on broadcast on UCS and NA or EU. So, very interesting picks all around here for both sides, though. Fellows United is going to be locking down this Hoopa, and version 1 looking like they're going to be sticking with a very strong secure in their top side in this Blaziken.
Yeah, once again, Sylveon does come out to play. Very consistent draft for version 1 once again, but really the outlier player that we're going to be watching is going to be Locke on this final pick. We saw them in game number 1 of today's broadcast picking up that Venusaur, so they have a lot of options, and it's going to be a fun one too, especially when you see a Dodrio and a Charizard on the other side. Charizard is a last pick option. I would say Charizard does really well into very squishy teams because you have a pretty impactful Unite move that directs all that damage from Seismic Slam on one character. But kind of like in game number 2, in round number 1 for version 1, they have a very bulky team. Molinaki is going to be grabbing that Aegis Slash, which is, again, that last pick option that Locke just switched over. So I don't see a whole lot of targets for this Charizard to be locking down one single character because all of those characters have really strong self-healing options and are very bulky just as general as a character.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I am the bearer of bad news, Draku. Apparently,
Wasn't
one of
Charizard,
the
was it?
players, it wasn't Charizard, no. One of the
Okay.
players did crash in draft. So we are going to be resetting.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, this sword is a very was going to be a very good pick into like the three or four characters that I believe Fellows United had. Because I'm going to assume this Dodrio was intentional. Sword is one of those few characters that could really stop Dodrio in its tracks and has the capacity to 1v1 the Gyarados. Whatever fifth pick Fellows United had right there, we'll see what was in store, but. I believe version 1 will have the opportunity to take that back. So give me just one moment. Gotta get all of this set
Yeah,
up.
looks like both teams are going to reset. I'm not familiar with the specific rules of the Articuno League, but if maybe Kyle or Ribbon want to, speak on that, where do these teams pick up? Are they going to be completely redrafting, or are they going to
Um,
take the draft to the to the spot where the player crashed?
no, we are going to be taking the draft to the spot where the player crashed. So the draft will be going back to Fellows United, locking in that still locking in that slow bro, still locking in the Hoopa,
Okay.
along with but
Whoa, 2 of me.
oh, that is 2 of you. Whoa. Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it looks like we may or may not be seeing an Aegis Slash because that was the 10th pick. That was after the crash had happened. So we may or may not be seeing a Dodrio. I think they're going to play to, or they're going to draft to that point. So we're going to have the 3rd and 4th pick for Fellas United, and then we'll go to that last pick in the Aegis Slash, I believe, is where we're going to have the draft to go up to. So definitely going to be seeing a Slowbro. Definitely going to be seeing a Trevenant and a Sylveon. And it's a very scary first 2 picks for version 1, if you ask me.
Yeah, very tanky comp, and V1 already has one of the primary answers into those tanky comps taken away in that Sylveon pick. That Hyper Voice loves shredding tanks and tanky Pokemon alongside with it, especially if you can keep characters in that sweet spot like version 1 did have. They did have a considerable amount of CC, and with that Eldegoss slow, along with any of the combos that Blaziken can do with their Blaze Kick to shove things into walls, I feel like that Sylveon was going to have a really easy time blowing up whatever they wanted to.
Yeah, it also makes the Slowbro's job just a little bit more difficult to decide on who to use the Slow Beam on, right? All the characters on the side of version 1 are, again, like we've been saying for these last 3 games that we've seen them draft so far, they're all very bulky Pokemon. So even if they are able to lock them down with that Slow Beam, it kind of takes a village to take down that one character, even if they are locked in one place.
Yeah, absolutely. Just getting word from the teams as they are ruling in because this was a little bit of a crash, so things should be getting started right quick very soon. Um, all right. I just need to be talking to the team right now. Unfortunately, the teams right now.
How come we don't see any T-Tar? Oh wait, it's been banned out.
It's been banned. Yeah, it's been banned.
No T-Tar, but like no Metagross too.
I just want to see T-Tar. I just want to see what teams do with it. You know, like it's
no
yeah. Everybody's complaining about it, right?
Too. I mean, well, we've only seen 2 games so far, but still no Phalanx. The character is the newest character to be added to the roster. You don't see a whole lot of that. I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with how to draft in a Phalanx, but if you're not super familiar, it's a very strong 4th and 5th pick option because I'm sure we know all the various counters for Phalanx now. Of course, we know Giga Drain on Venusaur, E-Speed Lucario. Any character that really has AoE damage or can reset off of hitting anything, whether it be a wild Pokemon or an enemy Pokemon, so that encompasses E-Speed Lucario. Does really well into Phalanx, but those are the 2 examples that I think most people are familiar with, and most players are familiar with. Some other ones that we might not have addressed, maybe things that build up shields. So Metagross's Gyro Ball can build up shields off of the brass of the Phalanx. If you're not familiar with the terminology that comes with the character Phalanx, the brass is the head of the Phalanx, the largest of the Phalanx, and then you have the troopers, the 5 smaller Phalanx units behind the brass.
I think the technical term is actually the little guys. The little guys.
Oh, the little dudes, the little lads.
The little dudes.
The little homies.
All right, looks like y'all are good to go. I'm gonna switch over the thing, and y'all take it away.
Yep. So it looks like they just went ahead and finished out the rest of the draft and picked bans. So we're just gonna be taking it straight to blind. V1 still does lock in that Aegis Slash though. And that 5th pick does end up being an Espeon.
Yeah, and the 10th and final pick, they're still going to go with the Aegis Slash. So I would say Espeon, definitely a stronger pick than Charizard, if you'd ask me. So excuse all of that theory crafting I did with the Charizard before, but Espeon's still a very consistent pick for the evolutions, or I guess in general in the attacker position. And I'm looking at these teams fairly bulky across the board. I do anticipate fairly long and drawn out team fights, but I would say the most interesting pick of these 10 Pokemon that we're seeing is going to be Martine on this Dodrio, and we see they have the one of the more expensive holowares, and that Pokebuki holoware being released for the Dodrio. They also do have a gold ribbon on this character. So lots of experience for this Dodrio player. And when you look at this enemy team, you know, very bulky across the board. They have quite a bit of crowd control too, so most likely going to be a tri-attack Dodrio. And anticipating this is going to be the character that does most of the scoring across your team, and maybe even being more of a wandering Dodrio rather than a Dodrio that engages in team fights very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's get into things. Game 1, Fellas United versus V1. They are going to be sending this sword up into the top path, and Locke will be taking that jungle as that Torchic. And it is going to be very interesting to see how the Fellas United does use this Dodrio. They've actually given the Slowbro the blue buff, which is super interesting. Maybe leaving this Slowbro in the bot lane while Martine collects the rest of the jungle, because they've sent this Espeon topside Dracu.
Yeah, not sure why they gave the Slowbro the blue buff specifically. If you're not familiar exactly what each of the buffs do, right? That blue buff gives you lower cooldowns in all of your abilities, and this red buff or this orange buff that you see this Espeon has provides slow for all of your attacks, right? So this Dodrio is not a Dodrio, by the way. They gave this Espeon that red buff all completely, so no experience shared there. And this Dodrio headed up to the top path, grabbed a stack for themselves, and they're quite a bit a ways away from becoming that level 5.
Yeah, but this is an overwhelming amount of offense in this top side, covering up Mhal. Still level 4. Locke is going to drag them some free farm, though. Being's going to be looking for some firing, but has to eject button away super quick from Nico on this Sylveon, who came up just to respond. We see both of these tanks still flopping about in the bot side. It does look like the win of that big farm does go to Rustic and gets that evolution on Trevenant.
Yeah, both level 5s for the defender, so not a huge loss for Fellas United getting that evolution from the Phantom to the Trevenant. But I guess the bigger question, or I guess the bigger thing that we have to notice on the field that we can't see on screen, is that the Gyarados is a full Gyarados in the top pass. So, you know, conservative engagements for these teams is definitely going to go into the side of the team that has the Gyarados, right? Because they have basically a character that doesn't do very well in the early game, but now that it is fully enabled, it is a Gyarados and no longer a Magikarp. I would say Fellas United has a pretty strong early game lead because of this evolution.
Yeah, and getting that Gyarados up so early is so important for Fellas United. But it's been a bloodbath in both lanes right now. Even fighting over this mid-birds, Whaley's trying to reach in and get something, but it looks like this big farm is going to be secured by the rest of Fellas United. V1 is going to take this opportunity to crack this bot side open pretty early, catching the Slowbro off guard. They have been absolutely bullying this bottom side at the moment. Fellas United definitely controlling the tempo of this game, but V1 is also finding so much value where they are not.
Yeah, it's I'm sure version 1 has a lot of experience playing with a Hoopa and also against a Hoopa as well. If you're not familiar how to play against a Hoopa, it's not necessarily you're playing against the character, but you're trying to control your positioning on the field by taking away goal zones rather early on to lessen the impact of the Hoopa hyperspace highway, those portals that can transport you from the top and the bottom lane. If you're able to fragment that highway by taking away a goal zone rather early, that's how you play against this character specifically. It's not playing against the team, you're displacing them by reducing the amount of value you get from those hyperspace holes.
Yeah, Fellas United is trying their best to push in this Regieleki into this topside tier 1, but immediately eject moves are burned and a lot of uniting is happening on your screen. Asia / cleaning up 2 of those kills, catching Fellas United off guard. V1 is going to continue to pressure in and crack this tier 1 open before they can even do anything about it. Hoopa is going to come, but it's just going to be just too late and into the waiting arms of V1. That is going to be a free pick. They did let in that Regieleki on the top side, but there is no way that Fellas can respond to this overwhelming offense from V1.
Yeah, Fellas United was able to get that Gyarados evolution fairly early on, but really not able to get very much value out of that. They're able to break this goal zone in the bottom path fairly early on, but they scored in huge in the top path by breaking that tier 1 goal zone, getting a couple of scores in on that tier 2 as well. Probably not a lot of scores, but definitely getting some very high value stacks and maybe characters that might need it. Asia / in a 1v1 situation against a Dojo is definitely going to go into the favor of the Aegis Slash. We do see the KO award going over to the Sylveon, but one thing about this Aegis Slash is all of its autos, when they do have those quote-unquote boosted stacks, you can really lock down a Dodrio by getting those crowd control abilities from those boosted autos and KOing a character fairly easily with them too.
Yeah, and this is actually one of the few counters that version 1 has to seem to answer to this Dodrio, because Mhal has done their best jobs in absolutely trying to anticipate where Martine is going throughout their engagement, and seems to be effortlessly catching on to that Dodrio with ease. We'll see if that continues, but with objectives spawning on both sides of the map, it does look like V1 is going to prioritize this Registeel in the bottom, and that's going to continue this snowball that they've got going on.
Yeah, it's going to be an easy Registeel. You also have one of the best confirms in the game. They're not even going to use it because they don't even need it, as all 5 team members, or at least 4 team members, are in this bottom path, and Rustic is doing a very splendid job at putting themselves in another part of the map to make sure they have vision. And it looks like version 1 is going to walk onto this goal zone, get a KO there, and score in huge as well. I think they do have enough points to even break this goal zone too, and they do. Regieleki is going to be taken by Fellas United, but I think all the value is in other places of the map. Version 1 is going to have enough time to walk into this Regieleki to make sure they have the defend, and now they still have the score lead with those scores in that tier 2.
Yeah, and V1, even though this top lane is under a lot of pressure right now, Rustic does such a great job of holding against multiple members of Fellas United, and they're going to be completely happy with how that set of plays went, because they were able to crack that bottom tier 2. That means that they have no sort of rotation anymore with that Hoopa Hyperspace Highway effectively shut down on a trip to the Pokemon Center as well. V1 looking like they've got Fellas United's number right now.
Yeah, 304 to 42. This is looking very much like our round 1 matchup against Ethereal. And again, I think it's all on the backs of this core of Blaziken, Sylveon, and Trevenant. Very bulky core among those 3 characters. Has very good rip, with the Sylveon and the Blaziken very good secure. And again, with Blastoise being the global ban among these teams, Trevenant is definitely the best defender of the roster.
They do get a pick on the Sylveon, and that is going to be some good XP, but not even a lot, as it got split between both the Gyarados and the Dodrio, so only getting a little bit of leveling, but definitely V1 catching more of that as this sword continues to power up more and more. Lock already level 13 on this Blaziken. It's going to be really tough because this Dodrio is the main core of this Fellas United roster. They're going to be the one that's going to be definitely controlling the tempo of these team fights, because they're going to be the ones looking for that flank, looking for that engage. It's going to be really rough for Fellas to try to catch them, but with V1, I think it's super easy, because they've got this Trevenant, they've got this sword that's seemingly doing so much work. So Fellas United definitely needs to try to isolate this Blaziken away from this Aegis Slash, because when they're together on the screen, they've been tearing apart.
Yeah, of course you have the slow, bro. Best Unite, one of the best Unite moves in the game, but it's hard. Like I was saying in draft, I don't know which character to even use that on, Ribbon. I mean, you lock down the Blaziken, and the Sylveon just never goes down. This slow, bro, is actually being caught out by themselves. Can they get out of here? They do narrowly, and they also got a Hoopa Hyperspace hole to send them back home to the central area, but they're back in the engagement. They have in full health once again, but you know, this Dodrio is going to go for a score here. They're going to be contested by Liko. Again, splitting up those scores into 3 among the 3 heads is going to be rather challenging, because they have 50 points, Ribbon.
Yeah, and all V1 has to do is let the clock burn out right now. Unfortunately, failed engage right there from Fellas United. Bing does have to pop the size of Solaire to try to dissuade the engage, but V1's looking like they're piling out of there and burning more time. Fellas United, unfortunately, losing their Dodrio yet again with a minute left on the clock. They still got 260 points to score or a Rayquaza to take, and it's looking like a difficulty on both ways.
Yeah, looks like the Gyarados might be going for a score on a tier 1 goal zone. It doesn't even matter. They're still quite a ways away. And let's take a look at the Rayquaza. And it looks like version 1 is going to take that with the coup de grace, one of the best securing Unite moves in the game. Not very good into the, opposing Pokemon, but definitely very strong for securing objectives. And just like that, Version 1 is going to take that Rayquaza with that Unite move, take a couple of KOs as they make their way to the goal zones, and they're going to score in huge as well. 30 seconds left. Version 1 on their way to the winners finals, going up 1-0 in this game against Fellas United.
Yeah, Fellas United just unfortunately didn't look like they were all on the same page right there. Too spread out and unfortunately getting picked apart and brought together by V1. Fellas United trying to just desperately find any sort of avenue in there, but not a single target they could lock down. Both this Blaziken and this Aegislash are very mobile characters. So even with that slow beam, unfortunately, they're not able to find anything, especially with a lot of the damage from Fellas United being a lot of single targeted damage. We're looking at that stored power Espeon, that Tri-Attack Dodrio, even this Gyarados. So it's very easy for V1 to kind of control whatever Fellas United is trying to do on the screen and really just have their way with it. So V1 has a lot of great ways that they could react there, and Fellas United, unfortunately, back to the drawing board right here for this game too.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the same team composition for Version 1 every single game, and it's as a caster, you can try to theorize how to play against this team. Well, it's not very easy, even if we're not actually playing in the game itself. I think one way to maybe try to combat Version 1's team is to try to match bulk with bulk, right? You have two fairly squishy Pokemon on your side, and that Dojo and Espeon that didn't get a whole lot of value, and it's hard. It's definitely hard to say, but I think a good place to start is using your bans on some of the more consistent characters that they've been leaning into in that Sylveon, Trevenant, and Blaziken.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like Whaley also has kind of a great answer in the support role to whatever it seems that these teams have wanted to do. Eldegoss right here is really a great answer into Dodrio. Just the universal slows that those boosted autos provide, along with the reliance on that Cotton Spore and the Cotton Cloud Crash as well. So it was just really rough for Martine to try to find a way in that game. And it did look like Fellas United had a really strong early game plan right there of letting Martine and Bing run up top and try to like dominate the lane. But after that 850 engagement, it seems like V1 just had control of the tempo for the rest of the match.
Yeah, I mean, they got the Gyarados going early. That's one point I gave over to Fellas United, but again, not getting a whole lot of value once the Gyarados did actually get evolved. So, yeah, going into game number 2, I think, again, the priority of the ban should definitely be, like I've been saying, both on VC here and also in the chat, but Sylveon is it should be a very high priority ban, and I also think Blaziken might have a contention for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But going into our bans for game number 2, out of game, it does look like it is going to remain the same. Umbreon and Crustle taken off the field. So we'll see if things change in game. We'll see if Fellas United can bring a lot of different picks. Honestly, I haven't seen Martine on Dodrio in a while, but I know they've got plenty of other clips in the magazine to fire away at V1. Being also really great carry as well. So this team definitely has answers. It is going to be up to them to see what they can draft into in game 2, because V1's been looking pretty consistent throughout this entire game. Lico's been doing a great job of having that situational awareness of where to be. We saw it especially like in that game when they were just in the perfect place at the perfect time to find a knockout. And V1 definitely has that synchronity. From the English, the exact English is escaping me, but they're just on the same page, and I feel like this is a roster synergy. There we go. Duh, that's the word I'm looking for. But I feel like if you can't match it in bans, you got to match it in game. You got to commit, and you have to identify where these V1s are spreading apart and try to find some sort of weak spot. But with characters so tanky, it's going to be continually difficult. So it's definitely a complex math equation to solve. But Fellas United, I believe they've got it.
I'm excited to see some of these other characters. I haven't seen Fellows United play a ton. I've interacted a ton with Martin because of the work that he does at Underdunk. But are there other characters that you've seen these players play that might come out here in a kind of a last ditch effort for Fellows United? Maybe.
All right. Sorry. I was just responding to the teams because we are going to be heading straight into drafts, Draku. Yeah, I feel like Sylveon definitely has to be answered in some way, shape, or form here. I've been saying it for months. This is such a safe character in draft to play because there's so few answers into it. You can just lock it in early, and it's a really great. It has really great responses to almost anything that is on the Unite cast. So unless you can like really lock it down or really bully it, it's really difficult. So it does look like V1 is going to be sticking to their same bans, and so does Fellows United, once again banning away that Cramorant and that T-Tart.
Oh my gosh. This is for sure first pick Trevenant or first pick Sylveon. Okay, they banned up the plays again. It's a good start, but Trevenant is the best defender in the game. Like I think some would say that Umbreon might be in contention, but I think in terms of being a true defender, I think Trevenant is the best. It has such strong displacement. You can even like reset that displacement if you run Curse Hornleech, and we're already seeing here two of those puzzle pieces that have been ingredients for success for version 1. These last 3 games that we've seen them have been this Trevenant Sylveon. And Blaziken can throw that in there too, but it's banned out this game.
Yeah, no, and honestly, banned away by Fellows United smartly there. Let's see if they can find any other sort of advantages to gain against this Sylveon. Meowscarada is one of those few answers. The Flower Trick moveset would go really nicely here in battling against that Sylveon, or if you can outright DPS it, DPS check it with that Metal Claw moveset. It's going to be very interesting to see, but Meow does really great because of that passive and getting that invisibility and those invincibility frames, so they could really try to one-up the Sylveon there as well.
Well, Locke is pretty confident in going playing Gardevoir into a Meowscarada with that vision of the enemy team. But a character that we've talked a little bit about are these little guys. In this last pick, Rixel picking up the Phalanx. I would say it's a really strong pick into the enemy team. One thing you do have to worry about with those troopers and with the character as a whole with Phalanx is Rustic on this Trevenant. We're most likely going to be immediately going into a Curse Hornleech build for this Trevenant, because again, Curse builds up faster with the more things that are around you, whether they be enemy Pokemon or enemy Pokemon. And so if you activate that Curse right next to a Phalanx, you can almost immediately build up that Curse meter to full.
Yeah, absolutely. 6 guys in 5th pick here for Fellows United. Hopefully this pick will bring them to a Game 3 situation, but they've got one tough hill to climb in V1 right now. Liko has been an overwhelming star on the Sylveon right now, and hopefully they can try to maybe get an advantage topside before Malinaki gets this evolution on this Gyarados, but it's going to be really rough when you're walking into 850Bs and standing against a Curlia for this roster, especially with such a weak gank topside like Meowscarada that unfortunately will not be able to evolve. They will be walking up there as a Floragato. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how Fellas United does end up playing this top lane engagement.
One thing that we talked about in game number 1 was lock on the Venusaur. Now the Venusaur is on the other team. Looks like Bing picked up the Venusaur heading into the bottom lane, but they do have that eject button, which leads me to believe it is going to be a Solar Beam Venusaur. And kind of like in game number 1, that team, Ethereal, did not have any checks for a Solar Beam Venusaur. And looking at version 1's team, I don't think they have a check for the Venusaur either. I mean, they have dive from the Sylveon to potentially get to that Venusaur in the back line, but in terms of range or in terms of dive, they don't really have very strong enough of a counter to this Venusaur. So a question I'm going to have is, how well can Venusaur or version 1 get to this Venusaur on the back line?
Ooh, Martine looking for a little bit of a cheeky invade here to try to catch Lock out close to the farm. They will secure it with that leafage that is going to delay Lock demonstrably, unfortunately. Shutting down that Curly at level 5 topside is going to leave them incredibly vulnerable here on this side for V1. So Fellas United hoping to possibly continue to spike this advantage that they've now accrued topside, and unfortunately it is going to be sent to the bot side for this Incurlia. So we will have opposite junglers on opposite sides right now. It does look like Fellas United is able to clean up that bottom side and on the top as well. Liko does come up to rotate with that Sylveon, but unfortunately just a little too late. Fellas United looking really strong here.
Yeah, it's somewhat to be expected too, right? Gyarados, again, we all know that Magikarp doesn't have the best early game. Curlia and, Ralts doesn't have a very strong early game as well with last hitting, as we saw there, that leafage going up against that Ralts with the confusion. So kind of to be expected once we get this Gyarados online with that effort gauge. We see that here almost becoming a Gyarados completely. And Curlia, once they become that level 8 to get their, final evolution, their more significant damaging abilities, that's when the game really does start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Martine just a level away from their other move as well. They're going to collect all of those small Altarias, but Curlia will secure the big Altaria. Martine does find level 7, though, in just ticking XP, so that is going to be very strong for this Fellas United topside if they want to try to do anything here. Malinaki is pretty safely guarded by this Eldegoss, though, so Martine's going to have to be sneaky, and being sneaky is what they're trying to do. They do spot out Lock on that vision, so it does look like Fellas United is trying to focus up on this top side right now while V1 is waiting for the engage.
All right, this Phalanx has gone a more unconventional pair of moves for its abilities. It is a no retreat, and I believe that is Iron Head. We can see they are pounding into the ground. You see that aura around them, so they do have a little bit of a attack boost when they are in that formation, and just after they use that Iron Head, you can see with the aura underneath them.
Yeah, and they'll also be able to take advantage of the defense boost that no retreat formation brings. So Fellas United is going to have a really easy time with this Phalanx and walking forward, and even possibly maybe even walking back a little bit, as a lot of the damage that V1 has provided is a lot of frontal facing, front to back team fight damage. Fellas United does secure this Regieleki in the top side, V1 taking the Regirock in the bottom. So both teams flipping the map right now. It's going to be how long Umbreons can hold this pad. They only stop one score. Liko barely caught, but still has that Fairy Frolic if they choose to use it. And yes, they do. They are going to have to burn it to avoid getting KO'd by that Flower Trick. Bing is making it rain on these beams, though. But this Phalanx is going to get a little bit more value out of this top side and getting a little bit more stacks.
Yeah, should be close to being fully stacked up on that attack way. Another score going in as well. They don't break the goal zone just yet. They afforded all of their team members to the bottom path to defend that bottom tier 1 goal zone. But halfway through the game now, 96 to 97, 1 point separates these two teams. And it looks like right now both teams kind of separated across the central, part of the map right now, going for these center area Swablu's and Altaria. Don't know which team got the most of that, but going into halfway point of the game right now, both teams look really close in level and obviously in score too.
Yeah, this is a very even game right now. And once again, both teams snapping plays on the opposite side of the map. Bing is making it rain with a Verdant Anger, but unfortunately caught underneath that Fairy Singularity. Mhal is quick to respond, sliding in, and that is a cleanup for V1 on this top side. And unfortunately, on the bottom side, Martine and Umbreons could not find the pick on that Sylveon, and neither could get scores in. So V1 making a big play here in an otherwise even game in with objectives quickly spawning on this map. It does look like Fellas United still has a few Unites to respond with. This Hoopa just clicking into level 9. This Meowscarada just clicking into level 9 as well. So Fellas United still has an opportunity to make comebacks happen.
Yeah, both teams have quite a number of Unite moves to use in this next engagement. This is probably my favorite time because now everyone has access to their Unite move. I think the big character to watch is going to be the Hoopa. They are in the top path right now. They might try to go for a steal, but Fellas United walking in to this tier 1 goal zone, that Dust Devil formation being used by the Phalanx player, getting some high value just preventing the enemy team from approaching is going to be an easy secure for Fellas United as they take that Regirock off the floor.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it looks like Fellows United was maybe trying to possibly respond to both plays on the map by sending that Hoopa topside, but unfortunately picked out by Malinaki allows V1 this Regieleki topside, and they're only going to have one place to push this bottom lane. Maul and Waylord are waiting in the wings to see exactly how Fellows United responds to this push. It looks like they are putting the defense on the bottom side, but the defense is caught knee-deep in enemy back lines right now. Bing is trying to make a lane and get some sort of value. Yohiro pops the Rings Unbound to get the slow bro out of there, but that's Maul in the back line. Martine is quick to respond, though, shutting that down, but getting shut down themselves. Already 2 for 1 here for V1. Lots of low health bars that Whaley is going to be able to refresh with that Cotton Cloud Crash. A reset that is put down saves Fellows United just in time, but I don't think they're going to be taking that portal back. Both teams going to be licking their wounds in the Pokemon Center.
Yeah, unfortunately, Fellas United wanted to put their pedal to the metal with that Hoopa and Venusaur Unite move going off in tandem, but one of their biggest damage dealers at Phalanx was having to deal with the Regieleki in the top path, so a little bit miscommunication, I would say there. I think they should have waited just a little bit longer to use those 2 Unite moves to make sure their Phalanx was in the fray at the appropriate time. You know, the Phalanx was able to catch the train, make it through that portal, but not really able to make it to the battlefield in the right amount of time.
Yeah, already Maul's looking for blood and locking this Venusaur down. Still not level 13 yet, so does not unfortunately have access to that solar beam plus yet. Those cooldowns would be monstrous right now for a roster that needs to put down damage on this Gardevoir, because this Gardevoir and the Sylveon are looking rather unchecked from the side of V1, and neither teams have really been able to secure much kills outside of the scrappiness of this game that has been. V1 is going to be looking to get the last second Registeel, but this might start a Ray fight. Fellas United, unfortunately, just a little bit too late already. Martine is caught out, and Fellas United is going to have to run for the hills and allow this fresh 100 burger to go in at the start of double time, Draku.
Yeah, 290 to 96. That is already a 200-point lead, a little less than 200-point lead for version 1. They're going to keep their pedals in the metal. That is version 1. Another verdant anger is going to come out, not getting a whole lot of value for it. A nice Unite move coming out of the Eldegoss player to keep their team alive. And again, these long fights are always going to be in the favor of version 1 because of how bulky their team is and has been for the last 3 games that we've seen them. Again, you want to take a look at a few of these team members, and more importantly is going to be this Slowbro and this Hoopa whenever they decide to use their Unite moves.
Yeah, Fellas United is desperately trying to look for some sort of avenue right now. They do break that tier 1 in the top side. The Rings do unbound. Martine is fresh on that flank trying to look, but V1 effectively pulls back and pulls away. Being is still trying to make it rain. They do catch the Sylveon. Unfortunately, is not able to be dropped down. Fairly Frolic lands on 2 members. Liko immediately tearing up Fellas United on their own, and V1 is able to respond to that Phalanx in the backside almost single-handedly with the rest of their squad burning down Rayquaza. That's all ready to have. Nobody is really in range except for this Hoopa to make it secure, but it does not happen. Going to the side of V1 is that Rayquaza, and already they're going to be making these points rain. Malinaki's cleaning up the rest of the roster. The white flag is already waved, and V1 taking another set 2-0.
Yeah, unfortunately, kind of what I was saying in game number 1, that Slowbro used the Unite move on, I would say, a pretty high value target on version 1, but again, Sylveon, a fairly bulky attacker as as a character, and going into that Unite move immediately, getting that shielding and keep staying alive, getting 2 characters even after being slow beamed. It's tough to see if you're Fellas United, getting the Unite move on the character that's most appropriate, but not getting the KO and actually trading 2 KOs after that slow beam expired.
Yeah, also, can we talk about how little damage Locke has been taking for this entire these entire last 2 sets? This is like the first time I've seen them take double-digit damage in these last 4 games. I do just want to clarify how great that is that Locke is finding the perfect places to continue outputting damage, but also not taking damage in return, especially against an enemy Meowscarada, which has a great amount of outplay in that little engagement with that double team. So unfortunately, the cat does not come out of the bag here for
Yeah.
Fellows United, and that is going to be a 2-0 for V1. Definitely, they looked like they were a little bit more on the same page with getting that failing strong, but unfortunately, when that Rayquaza fight broke out, Liko was just able to single-handedly decimate 3 members of Fellows United, coming fresh off a slow beam and into that Fairy Frolic. So, really great play from Liko. Somebody needs to take away Sylveon from V1. I'm just saying it.
I've been playing a number of Phalanx myself, especially when my ranked games draft into a blind pick game, or not draft, but go into a blind pick game. But in that specific team composition, I would have opted to go into a more unconventional moveset. I mean, that in itself was pretty unconventional, but I would have actually gone beat up Ironhead, which is a more dive oriented flavor of Phalanx, if you may. Right, when you take a look at the enemy team, you have Sylveon, of course, that has a ton of mobility that can kite in and around a no retreat formation Phalanx, but that Gardevoir was even more uncontested too. You would think that maybe the Meowscarada would be the immediate check, but adding another character that has dive as well might have been to the advantage of Fellows United.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Fellows United could just not get this Venusaur online fast enough. Only in the tail minutes of final time before those final engagements, the Venusaur was able to get that level 13. But unfortunately, all they did with that Verdant Anger was really just effectively burn Rustic's Trevenant passive and chunk Maul pretty low. No executes coming out, even though both the beam and both hits of the Verdant Anger hit. So just unfortunately not able to translate into any sort of cleanup there. Martine was looking desperately for some sort of target, but I don't know. I didn't even see like a really good opportunity for them to unleash that Unite. So really great positioning and overall just really great synergy from V1.
Alrighty, everybody. Everyone say hello to Kyle, but we are going to be taking a quick break, but version 1 has locked in